chains are polished, they do not clatter, they glide. Torchlight moves across hammered gold and across the face of a woman who has not slept. The crowd presses inward, not shouting yet, waiting. She can hear the animals somewhere ahead. She can smell the sand. Her wrists are bound, but her posture is straight. The doors of the arena have not opened, not yet. Rome does not rush these moments. It prepares them. What happens to a defeated ruler after the battle is over? History tells us about wars. It tells us about sieges and betrayals and last stands. It tells us who won. It rarely tells us what came next, what Rome did to the women who once commanded cities, who signed treaties, who believed their crowns meant something. This is not a story about execution. It is a story about transformation, about how the most powerful empire of the ancient world dismantled queens, not always by killing them, but by rewriting what they were allowed to mean. To understand that, we have to step inside Rome at the height of its authority. At its core, Rome was not simply an army. It was a system, a legal machine that converted defeat into ownership. When a city fell, its people did not merely surrender, they changed category. Free became captive, sovereign became spoil. Roman jurists described this under the law of nations. Conquest dissolved political identity. A defeated ruler had no standing beyond what Rome chose to grant. And yet, Rome was careful. It could crucify thousands along a roadside. It could burn a town to the foundations. But when it captured royalty, especially women who had ruled in their own right, the empire slowed down. Because a queen was not just a prisoner. She was a symbol. Symbols required choreography. The triumph was the centerpiece of that choreography. When a victorious general returned to the capital, the city transformed into a stage. Painted scenes of battle rolled through the streets. Carts carried captured weapons. Exotic animals followed in chains. Then came the prisoners, kings, princes, sometimes queens, dressed not in rags but in the clothing of their former power. The message was deliberate. Rome did not strip them of regalia, it displayed it. The spectacle said, "Even at your most magnificent, you are ours." In 61 CE, in the province of Britannia, a queen named Boudica stood before Roman officials after her husband's death. He had been a client ruler, tolerated so long as he obeyed. His will attempted a compromise, shared inheritance between his daughters and the emperor. Rome rejected it. Property was seized, nobles were dispossessed. According to the historian Tacitus, Boudica was flogged, her daughters assaulted. The brutality was not random, it was administrative. Rome was clarifying hierarchy. What followed was rebellion, one of the most violent uprisings the empire would face on its own soil. Roman settlements burned. Thousands died. Then came the counterattack. Disciplined legions under Gaius Suetonius Paulinus met a vastly larger tribal force. The Romans chose their ground carefully. Narrow, enclosed, cavalry on the wings, infantry locked in formation. The slaughter that followed was decisive. Ancient sources claim tens of thousands of Britons fell in a single day. Boudica vanished from the record soon after. Some accounts say poison, others suggest illness. Rome did not parade her through the capital. Her story became a warning, delivered locally. Total rebellion would mean total ruin. But in the East, 2 centuries later, Rome faced a different kind of adversary. In the oasis city of Palmyra, trade routes converged between the Mediterranean and Persia. It was wealthy, cosmopolitan, strategically vital. When imperial authority fractured during the 3rd century crisis, a woman stepped into the vacuum. Her name was Zenobia. She did not present herself as a rebel. She presented herself as a stabilizer, protecting trade, securing borders, minting coins that bore not only her son's image, but her own. Her forces expanded into Egypt, into Anatolia. For a moment, Palmyra controlled much of Rome's eastern lifeline. Then the Emperor Aurelian turned his attention east. The campaign was swift. City after city fell back into Roman hands. Zenobia attempted to flee toward Persia. She was captured near the Euphrates. And then something unusual happened. She did not disappear. She was not executed on the battlefield. She was transported alive to Rome. The journey itself was a statement. Months of travel under guard. Time for rumours to spread. Time for anticipation to build. By the time she arrived, the capital had already decided what she would represent. When Aurelian celebrated his triumph in 274 CE, Zenobia walked in the procession. Ancient accounts describe her adorned in jewels, weighed down by golden chains. The gold was real. The weight was real. But the purpose was not humiliation alone. It was contrast. Rome wanted the crowd to see her as she had been, radiant, regal, unmistakably sovereign, and to understand that none of it had protected her. The triumph ended as they often did at the Temple of Jupiter. Many defeated kings met their deaths shortly after the parade, strangled in the Tullianum prison beneath the Capitoline Hill. Zenobia did not. She lived. Sources suggest she was granted an estate in Italy, that her children married into Roman society, that she aged not as a martyr, but as a private citizen under imperial supervision. Why spare her? Because execution creates legend. Survival creates ambiguity. A dead queen becomes a rallying cry. A living one, absorbed, accommodated, gradually forgotten, becomes a lesson. Rome governed vast territories with limited manpower. It relied on local elites to maintain order. Those elites were watching. If you resist and die, your name may endure. If you resist and live under Roman terms, your legacy dissolves. This was psychological architecture. The triumph was only the visible layer. Behind it lay months, sometimes years of controlled uncertainty. Captives were held, questioned, displayed selectively. Their appearance managed. Their presence timed for maximum impact, not tortured beyond recognition, not reduced to spectacle in the way common prisoners might be, preserved, so that their transformation could be seen clearly. And the audience extended far beyond the crowd lining the streets. Envoys from allied kingdoms attended triumphs. Traders carried descriptions back along caravan routes. Provincial governors reported reactions. Rome was staging political theatre for an empire. It understood something modern audiences sometimes forget. Power is sustained not only through force, but through narrative. What does it mean when a queen is no longer queen? What happens to the idea of divine right when the divine does not intervene? For subjects in distant provinces, watching a sovereign reduced but not destroyed was destabilizing. If Rome could bend royalty without killing it, what chance did ordinary rebels have? Over time, patterns shifted. In Britain after Boudica, large-scale female-led military resistance disappears from the historical record. In the East, no comparable queen rose against Rome for generations after Zenobia. This was not coincidence, it was memory management. Yet there is irony here. Rome could absorb foreign queens, but it struggled with its own imperial women. Figures like Livia or Agrippina the Younger wielded enormous influence behind the scenes, but official power remained carefully male. The empire that mastered the art of redefining queens abroad never fully resolved what to do with female authority at home, and perhaps that tension mattered. By the 5th century, Rome's western half fractured under pressures it could no longer manage: economic strain, military overreach, internal instability. The triumphs faded, the arenas quieted, but the method, the conversion of rivals into cautionary tales, did not vanish with the empire. Stand today in Rome, and you can visit the ruins of the Colosseum. You can walk through the remains of the Mamertine prison, traditionally associated with executed kings. There are plaques, tours, explanations. There is less to see of the villas where former queens lived out quiet, supervised lives. Survival leaves fewer monuments. History prefers clean endings: battle, defeat, death. It struggles with the slower punishment of absorption. So what was Rome truly doing to captured queens? It was not simply humiliating them, it was converting them. From sovereign to subject, from threat to testimony, from ruler to reminder. The gold chains were never just restraints, they were punctuation marks at the end of an argument. The argument was simple: no crown exists outside Roman permission. And when we look back, what disturbs us most may not be the violence, it may be the precision, the restraint, the understanding that identity can be dismantled without spilling more blood. That lesson did not die in antiquity. Empires change, technologies evolve, public stages look different. But the instinct to redefine powerful women, to measure their composure, to narrate their fall, to decide whether their survival counts as mercy, remains uncomfortably familiar. History does not only record what happened, it records what was allowed to be remembered. If this story unsettled you, consider why. Was it the brutality of rebellion crushed? The image of a queen in chains? Or the quieter realization that living on someone else's terms can be the harsher sentence? There are more stories like this, moments where power shifted not with a sword, but with a procession. If you value deeply researched explorations of the past, stories that look past the spectacle into the structure, subscribe and stay with us. And tell us in the comments which chapter of history you think hides the most uncomfortable truth. Because sometimes the most revealing question is not who was killed, it is who was allowed to live and why.